You may not have been familiar with the man they call pro-life Spider-Man until last week when he scaled the 600-foot tall Accenture Tower in Chicago without a rope or any safety equipment.
Yeah, I saw it happening online, and I'm afraid of heights, so I could barely look.
All
It
right.
was too
Well,
much.
I guess you won't be accompanying him on his next gambit, but
No.
yeah, he was arrested after reaching the top, as has happened before when he's scaled tall buildings, because that's frowned upon by law enforcement. So why does he do it? Well, let's get perspective on his climbing prowess and the rationale of choosing buildings, tall buildings in big cities, as he's done. Maison Des Champs joins us now, pro-life Spider-Man. Maison Des Champs, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Dan.
So, talk about your climbing first before we get into sort of the politics and cultural piece. You like, I love these documentaries on free climbers, like the guy who climbed El Capitan. What's your background in climbing? Your affinity for that?
Yeah, I grew up in Michigan, but when I was 16, the whole family moved out to California, and we had to find something else to do other than hunting and fishing because there's not a lot of that in LA. So my dad bought me a rope and a harness, and next thing you know, I'm climbing with guys like Alex Honnold. And, actually, I've never climbed with Alex, but of course, his good friend. And and next thing you know, you just run with it.
Sure. And so how did you transition from, the bucolic settings of mountains and the climbing community to the more insular climbing community in urban centers?
Yeah, so that's a funny story, but I was sitting on my phone one day, scrolling on Instagram, and I seen this photo, and it was a photo of a baby. She should have had a bow on her head, but instead she sat in a Ziploc container. She was dead with a crushed skull and one eye left open, and I looked this baby in the eye, and I felt as though if I didn't do something to stop this evil, because here's this baby who's just murdered, laying in a Ziploc container like she's takeout food. If I didn't do something to stop this murder, this abortion, then I felt like, honestly, what kind of man am I? And so I came up with this idea. It kind of adapted what Alain Robert was doing back in the 90s. He had climbed the New York Times building to protest climate change and hung up all these banners all over the building. And I said, what if instead of doing this for climate change, we do this to raise awareness about what's going on in America with abortion and raise money for women in crisis pregnancy. So I raised money for an organization called LetThemLive.org. And every time we climb a skyscraper, we save a baby from abortion. We help their mother with the rent, the medical bills, all of the expenses that she needs so that she doesn't need to get an abortion. Because it's like 73% of abortions happen because of financial circumstances. Say your car breaks down, you have $1,000 payment. How are you going to drive your kids around? So we help these women, we save their children, and it all ends up working out in the end, very, very thankfully.
So when you climbed the
go ahead.
when you climbed the building the other day, I didn't, because I watched the news coverage and never knew that you were doing this to help raise money to stop abortions. How can you get your message across better? Or do you just think that the mainstream media doesn't want to hear why you're doing it?
So normally it's just flooded with interviews, and I can't get my message across. I've been on Tucker Carlson. I've been on a lot of mainstream conservative news sites, and I'm able to share that around, as well as on Instagram. Like if you go on my Instagram, I'm sharing victim imagery. People are able to see my little infographics that I've created that's talking about the pro-life history. This time around, basically what had happened was the Friday before the climb, I got news about what had happened in Israel. And your initial reaction is, oh gosh, like pray for these people. But what I do is so dependent on the news cycle that it had kind of killed all of the news for the climb. But that said, the reason why I didn't delay it was because this woman that we were helping, Sierra, that's her name, she needed the help really badly. And if we hadn't done this climb, I think she would have gone through with her abortion on Saturday. But it was a decision that I made to do it anyways, regardless of the news cycle, and just trusting in God that we would be able to help this woman, and thankfully we did. And we were able to save her baby from abortion.
So how does it work? So you live stream the climb on Instagram, and it draws attention to the organization, and you get people to donate because of the attention that is drawn to the larger cause by what you're doing. Is that basically the gist of it?
Yeah. You come on shows. I come on shows like yours, and I talk about what I do. I talk about abortion too, and it's sort of like, how do I make what I do not about what I do, and more about who I do it for. That's the goal, because at the end of the day, we want to try to get these news people to talk about abortion, to bring it into the media. And how do you do that? It's very hard when you have an entire industry trying to cover something up. But turns out all you have to do is climb a skyscraper.
Well, how did the members of Chicago Police Department's SWAT team receive you when you summited the Accenture building?
You know, there's some good cops and there's some bad cops. Along the way, there was someone banging on the glass, and I had told them, like, hey, guys, like, I'm trying to focus here. Like, please don't do that. And they, I heard through the window, and I have it on video, they had said, I don't care. That said, like I said, there's good ones and there's bad ones. When I got to the top, the police officers were very cordial, very nice. It wasn't like, hey, you're going right to jail. The first thing they say to me, are you okay? And they try to help in any way they can, of course.
Are you okay?
Well, did
like,
you go to jail?
It's not like, are you okay? Did you get injured? It's like, are you okay? What the hell is wrong with you? I think is what they meant by, are you okay?
Oh, no. It's, do you have any injuries? You need medical care. And so I think there's some good guys. There's some bad guys, of course. That's with anybody, any organization you deal with. But I was very, very wild ride. I'll just say that.
Well, did they deem you, a threat to the community, or did you get, released because of the Safety Act?
Yeah, the Safety Act comes in handy.
The Safety
yeah.
Act, yeah.
Here's the funny thing. Thing. It is not actually against the law to climb a skyscraper. They never thought of the law, right? So I usually get arrested on grounds of trespassing, which I have not committed, because the way trespassing works, you have to be warned. And if you're 500 feet up a building, you can't really be warned. And so you have to act in your own safety to get to the top, in which case you leave right away. That said, what I tell people is that it is a commandment. Proverbs 24 says, rescue those who are being deaf. And so it is our duty to rescue these children who are being murdered, because that baby that I saw sitting in that Ziploc container, she was one baby of 70 million that have been murdered in this country legally under the law by abortion. And so we have to do these radical things to save these children.
It's interesting. I don't. You're probably too young to remember him, but maybe just because of the precedent that was set. I mentioned Spider Dan. His name was Dan Goodwin. About 40 years ago, he climbed the Sears Tower, 110 stories, despite strong winds and some interference from firefighters, actually. And he had a purpose too. People forget the purpose, but his climb wasn't for sport. It was to draw attention to inadequacies in high-rise firefighting and rescue. Seriously, because 6 months earlier, he had witnessed a fire at the MGM Grand that killed 85 people. So, I mean, I'm just saying, he made a spectacle of himself for a cause, the way that you're doing too. So it's different causes, but it's one way to get attention, I suppose.
What I'll say about that is a completely silly idea that someone can climb a skyscraper to be essentially this firefighter. It takes a while to get up the building. Like this Accenture Tower took me almost an hour to climb. The Twin Towers fell in about 20 minutes. I mean, that's just insane that you'd think that you could be this superhero and climb a climb a building to pull people out of a fire. And honestly, Spider-Man Dan Goodwin, he doesn't impress me in his style of climbing. He was a great rock climber, separate from the skyscraper climbing. He used clamps and all sorts of devices to get up the wall.
Sure.
Who I'm impressed by, and a lot of people in Chicago don't realize just how great of an achievement this was. But my great friend Alain Robert, and the guy I kind of stole this idea from, he climbed the Sears Tower in 1999 with no clamps, no anything, just his climbing shoes and a chalk bag. And in my opinion, as someone who does this, that is the greatest athletic achievement of all time. There is nothing that surpasses that, because it's 1,700 feet of climbing with absolutely no rest.
All right, let me see about the. All right, so the free climber bias. I get it. No, I get it. I watched that documentary on the guy who free climbed El Capitan, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. But so what about, we had a few years ago, we had Nick Wallenda of the Wallenda family, of course. He walked across a wire from Marina Tower to the Leo Burnett building. Any high level tightrope walking in your future?
Oh man, I gotta be honest. I've done some. It's called high lining. It's like slack lining between two trees. It's a little different from tightrope, but same idea. I've done it across mountains before, and it is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it looks terrifying.
Not my thing. I get out there, and you're sitting down on this line, right, and it starts bouncing, and you just never feel comfortable, and you have to stand up and get across it, and my heart just leaves my body.
Well, is there anything in your future here? Maybe scaling John Fetterman or something? What's next for you?
Well, what I say is, so long as there are babies who need to be saved by abortion, then I will keep doing this. I don't like climbing skyscrapers, if I'm being honest. It's not fun. I don't find enjoyment in it. You have to go to jail usually afterwards and deal with courts, and it's just not the way to climb. But I do it because we can save these children. And I tell people, they always ask me, like, oh, what if you fall? What if this happens? And I say, look, these babies are being murdered. And what you've been promised is, by Christ, is eternal life. So why are you scared of death? Why are you scared of falling? Why are you scared of being persecuted? The only thing we should fear is God. And the question he asks us, and that's, what did you do to save my children?
What's the name of your organization again? The organization you climb for that provides assistance to pregnant women in need?
Yes, so it's called LetThemLive.org. They are one of the best organizations that I've seen. And last year we were at 400 babies saved. This year we've doubled that number, and we save almost one baby every day. And so we're very thankful. I'm very thankful to them and the work they're doing. So if you guys want to go support me, you can go support them. All the money goes to the women, and that's all we ask, is that we can save a baby and help a lady.
Maison Des Champs, pro-life Spider-Man. Maison, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Stay safe up there.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
With Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Hey, business owners, are you wondering how to grow your business? Do you need cash flow and a ready source for financing? Well, Signature Bank can help. Hi, Mike Gallagher here to let you know that Signature Bank's loan decisions are made locally by